All right, so as you all know, I assisted in Madison County after Hurricane Helene this past fall. My name is Sally. I'm with Person County. So just a real quick, want to orient you. Madison County is just a little bit north of Asheville. It is along the French Broad River and downstream of Asheville. So all that water that you saw in Asheville also went through Madison County. And there's currently about 22,000 people living there. If you need to visualize it on the map, it's where that little hook of Tennessee is. Has three main population centers: Mars Hill, Marshall, and Hot Springs. If you've ever gone up to the mountains and gone to the hot springs, that's where you went. So anytime you start a project, you start with what you know. And if you heard my presentation this morning, you know that I downloaded all of the data I could find. And I put it on this guy right here. This is worth my life at this point. So I did download the parcel information that the county had uploaded. I downloaded the address and road information that the county had uploaded. If you ever participated in the upload or the creation or maintenance of that data, thank you. This will happen in your community at some point, and someone will need your data. I also grabbed the flood zone information, grabbed some imagery. I spoke with our working group for enhanced emergency response, and I also checked out FIMAN, which hopefully you all are familiar with at this point. This is an example of what FIMAN looks like for most folks. They won't see the little scenario bar on the bottom, but if you log in, you can kind of see what the current river level is in any area in North Carolina. Anywhere there is a gauge, you'll be able to see the current and previous readings for the river level in that gauge. If you have a login, you can also look at some of those gauges and run a scenario. So what you're seeing here is just kind of base pool level for the French Broad River in Marshall. And you see how on the bottom it goes from green into yellow into orange and then red and purple. You may not be able to see, but that highest purple number is 13.5. So anytime you can sort of model what 13.5 feet of flooding might look like in Marshall, North Carolina. This is very cool, by the way. So I did exactly that. I looked at 13.5 feet of flooding in Marshall. What do y'all see? That's not good. So then I got on Google, our good friend Google, and I learned what these buildings were. You see that island there? That's a school and a wastewater treatment plant. Across the French Broad River on the north side is a fire department, a postal service, and a DMV. So based off of just flooding up to 13.5 feet, I could tell you that the majority of the town, of the historic portion of Marshall, was going to be underwater and potentially destroyed for the near future. That is 13.5 feet. Does anyone know how high the river got in Marshall? 20.1. It went 7 feet above the available prediction. So initially, if you heard some of the other presentations this morning, people show up on the ground with this really cool app on their phone. It's actually a configuration of Quick Capture, Esri's Quick Capture, and they use it to collect initial search and rescue information. Some of that was damage assessment information. Some of it was information about debris piles or places where they encountered, railroad ties that were floating or that sort of thing, and lots of other things that are unpleasant, and I really don't care to speak about. So that was sort of the initial pass. You can kind of see Madison County doesn't have a lot of that information, whereas some other counties did. And that's really unfortunate because it helped drive the operations that occurred after search and rescue. So walking in, I knew we didn't have the information I would have liked to have had to begin working there. So what I did instead was I took the floodplain information, I compared it to the damage assessment information that had been collected through SARCOP, and realized that the damage went well beyond the floodplain, went way up into the tributaries where there wasn't even a floodplain shown. And so with the help of our friends at the state and a couple of vendors, I used the state's damage assessment tool and deployed it to the staff in the county who were able to help me with this. So part of my job daily was to train the staff how to use Survey 123, how to take a picture with their phone, how to dictate into their phone, how to make choices in Survey 123 on their phones. Also manage their daily activities. And yes, I printed out paper maps for them to look at and follow. Wanted to make sure that two inspectors didn't go to the same place and do the same information because we were working offline, so they weren't able to update and see on on an immediate basis what was being done in the field. And then ultimately, I was able to take this dashboard and put it up on a screen within the Emergency Operations Center and keep the command staff up to date. So we had some challenges with damage assessment, and if you saw my presentation earlier, I mentioned the water and how quickly the water came and how quickly the water went, and it took stuff with it. It took entire neighborhoods with it. And so if you're a building inspector and you go out to a neighborhood and you don't know how many buildings there are, how do you inspect them? The address data was a little bit iffy here and there, so we couldn't really use it as an indicator of how many buildings there were. There were also a good number of people who had moved trailers and whatnot and not thought to get a permit to get an address, so they weren't in the system. So I did add to the information provided in the app from the state. I did add the building footprints layer. Thank you very much for providing that information to the locals. It was very helpful for them to be able to walk up to basically an outline and know that a building used to be there. And so this is one of those cases where there is a building still standing, which you can clearly see, and a debris pile, but there were actually 2 buildings on those concrete pads before the storm. I just wanted to give you kind of a visual example. This is actually from the property at Hot Springs. So if you've gone and sat in the hot spring, that's kind of in that building that's got the little point on the end of it there. But in the very northern part of the picture, you can clearly see on the left a building with a green roof that was present before the storm. That not only is it not present, you couldn't even tell there was a building there. And we saw this pattern repeated throughout, next to the French Broad, all throughout the county. So I did a lot of other work while I was there. I was actually looking at my notes earlier, and I guess I did more than I thought. But I did print maps for additional search and rescue operations. I put the SARCOP data on there. I put other information on there. The people on the ground had to delayer the debris piles, and they needed to know where the debris piles were. So I literally printed it out, and they wrote on it on the wall, which is fantastic. I helped identify properties that were ideal for debris removal sites. They had to be near a road that didn't have a road closure. They had to be of a certain size, and they had to have a willing property owner. I helped identify damaged water and sewer infrastructure for the volunteers who came in and the Army Corps of Engineers who are still assisting those communities with their waste disposal. I created lists of maps of partner organizations. If someone came in with a flatbed of water, what organization is on a road that is open and large enough to accept a flatbed truck? Because in the mountains, you can't turn that around anywhere. We also identified and communicated areas for flyovers for the French Broad, so we were able to get some imagery pretty soon after the event. And of course, we evaluated the road closures prior to reestablishing bus service. And then I prepared for the next set of volunteers. So lessons learned. Always prepare in fair weather. This will happen in your community. It might be an explosion. It might be a windstorm. It might be ice. Something's going to happen. ArcGIS online administration. If you don't know it, learn it. It was a bit of a challenge for me, but we figured it out. You need to know how to add and remove members, manage your user types, your roles, and your groups to be able to share across organizations. Be flexible. At one point in time, I wound up hand keying stuff that I found in an Excel spreadsheet and shoving it into a feature layer. Take notes and also take care of yourself. You are no value to anyone if you yourself are too tired to work. And with that, I will take any questions. Okay, good. Thank you.